statement that we are unable to verify this information, then it should have a substantiated evidence that we took these steps and we couldn't verify this information. We are not saying that this information is wrong, incorrect, or something. We couldn't verify this. That's it. We asked relevant questions, but we couldn't find irrelevant information about this statement. That's all, nothing more. Found to be deliberately false or misleading. And if found something, for example, if someone's saying, I have done this, and we found that this task was done by somebody else, and we asked relevant question and the person couldn't verify that information, then we should be able to say that this information is possibly misleading, so that the community knows before deciding to vote for anyone that the information put up by the nominee is correct, relevant, or misleading. Just in summary, we should be able, the NRC, we should be able to verify this information. It is consistent with the bylaws. It is not negating any clause or anything in the existing bylaws. It has a diverse representation. We have tried our level best to make it diverse. Most important part, it does not exclude anyone. So the community, the NRC is not excluding anyone from running for any election. It is overseen by the community leaders because there is an oversight, not just, of course, these are elected members, but there is an oversight by the elected members as well. Members can make an informed choice. That is the most important part, and this is what we are doing. Right now, if I put up my application, I mean, literally my nomination is there for routing security 6 as a chair. I can fill up anything. Secretariat, of course, has a role to verify some information, but they cannot verify everything. So they verify a few things from the legal point of view, because APNIC is a registered entity in Australia. But they cannot verify any claims. For example, if I say I've been running one of the largest ISP in Pakistan for 30 years, can they verify that information? Probably yes, but that's not their role. So that is something which the community, elected community members can say, well, no, by the way, you're not running an ISP for that many years. So that should be there when people go and review the nomination and say, okay, fine, this has been debunked. So that is not irrelevant information. So when you go out and vote, you know what you're voting for and who you are voting for. So that is the most important bit for this NRC. That's all from the presentation point of view. I would like you to have a candid discussion on that.
Hi, Aftab, Sanjeev here. I went through your proposal on the policies. It's been on the mailing list for some time. So that's good that there's not a sudden surprise. Everybody's had a chance to see it. I have two things I'm not understanding about the proposal, and then I have a bigger problem later. First is, this seems to conflate two issues here, two problems that you are seeing. The first is, what should be the review criteria? And you're proposing a change in the criteria from a purely checklist to somebody who's actually trying to verify information, expanded. So that's a criteria change. You are also proposing, as I understand right, a change in who implements the new criteria from the secretariat, which is a paid employee, to somebody elected or chosen by us. So the word community comes in, which, right? Would it make sense although the entire proposal is here and seeing that's on the mailing list, at least it's early days yet, but there have been some strong opposition and some good and strong support as well. Would it make sense to deal with each of these separately? If, for example, I can accept that the criteria should change, why can't the secretariat implement the criteria? There's no point saying we, the community, want to do it and the secretariat are employees. We employ the employees. So we can tell the secretariat to do this. So the secretariat, please check the height. If a full-time paid employee of APNIC does not have the time to check whether, and to use your example, you were ever running an ISP, how would I, who wakes up 3-4 times a year. And apart from my day job, I'm also running a SIG as a co-chair or whatever. What would I know about ISPs in Pakistan? How would I do a better job than Sunny? Just to use that name. That's my issue on who does it. On the what the criteria should be, I have an issue with when you say information is falsified. Australia has strict libel laws. Would the EC be okay with using apnic.blog.apnic.net to say, we believe that Aftab has falsified his employment record, and that appearing on blog.apnic.net? I believe that even though you're giving the council, the committee 3 options, I would never take the 3rd option. I would pretend I didn't hear it and move on. In fact, I would be reluctant, being risk averse myself. Others might be more honest than me or more ethically committed to the job you're giving them, to say he may not be lying, but we couldn't verify. Because I wouldn't even want to say that, because the implication there is maybe you are lying. I'm just pointing out that the criteria is changing. I'm not saying in a bad way, but the criteria is changing. Who is to implement is changing. And this is a jumbo proposal. Perhaps we could change the criteria first, let the secretariat run it, and then we are still around next year. Or we could say we will use the current criteria, but to make it more transparent, right? Have a diverse group of people implement the same criteria, and we can always modify the criteria next year.
Yep. Okay. So there are multiple questions. I mean, number one is, Sanjeev, I'm really happy to see you in person here. Yeah. So thank you for coming here. Number two, now, you're changing the application process is first point. So let's deal with that. I do not believe that Secretariat should be changing that process on their own. It should be the community feedback. They want to see some questions in the nomination paper, right? So we should be, among us, we should decide, okay, these are the questions you should be asking the nominees. So this is the zero step. We are saying that we need to review the application process and provide a feedback to Secretariat. We cannot implement it. Secretariat has to implement it. Yes, the NRC doesn't have the right to implement it. Any community member doesn't have the right to implement it. It has to be done by Secretariat. So you come up with a agreed process. Of course, it has to go back to the community saying, well, this is the NRC has agreed to change the review, the application process, and then the Secretariat will implement it, right? Even then, if we ask few questions, I'll punt that question to Craig in a moment, but I want to try that. Yes, it's an Australian registered entity. There are libel laws. We are not saying that information is false, right? The way you say it, allegedly, to avoid anything, but we are providing, we couldn't verify this information after asking these 4 questions. We were unable to verify this information. After asking that many questions from the nominee, we haven't got the relevant, we haven't got the right answer. And that's why we are just putting it there. So I do not believe that it is, it's liable in any case, because you are not saying that you are a liar. We are saying that information is non-verifiable or misleading because we couldn't verify it. The reason why I'm saying that it's important for the community to do that, because not the Secretariat role. Of course, they are, of course, paid employee. They have the resources, they can do it, but it is much more relatable if it is coming from the community. I know my region for X number of years. I know this person. That is not correct. I have seen this. Coming from a community has more value than coming from Secretariat, that is not correct. So that's my point of view, but I'll ask Craig what from the libels point of view, liability point of view as well.
Thanks, Aftab. It's Craig Ng, I'm APNIC General Counsel. really good to see this debate, because we do want to sort of design a system that is community-led and bottoms up that makes sense for people. So I think when you're talking about changing the criteria, it's not actually changing eligibility. What we're doing is that when someone nominates for any position, there's a little questionnaire that we publish from them. You know, we ask questions like, please tell the community why you are the best person for this job. Please tell if you're applying, nominating for APNIC EC, we say, please tell the community what sort of board experience or governance experience you've had. So those are the questions that, you know, the Secretariat in the past have thought of that would be relevant for the community. But those questions, what is relevant to the community when they want to exercise their vote, is better coming from the community. You know, for the community to say that for the policy SIG chair, I want people with this experience, this background, etc. So we ask those questions. So when we're talking about the criteria, we're talking about the questions to ask. And in terms of the review, from a Secretariat point of view, because and taking APNIC EC election as an example, from a governance and accountability point of view, I don't think it's a good look, and it's a good process for the Secretariat to be sort of vetting the EC application, because ultimately the Secretariat, you know, reports to the Executive Council. So, but Secretariat has the job, and you're absolutely right. You know, Secretariats are, you know, this is their day job. But what we would like to see is the Secretariat verifying objective information. So for example, if you're nominating for APNIC EC, you can't be a bankrupt. You can't be someone who's been charged with a fraud offense. So those are, and you can't be a disqualified person under Australian laws. So there are databases that we can check. And the Secretariat could do all those checks. But what the Secretariat shouldn't be doing is making sort of evaluation type judgment on the statements that candidates make. So someone says that, you know, I have been on the board of ICANN, for example, and you know, some people know that that's not correct, but not everyone knows that. So the idea, and from a libel point of view, you know, this is a sort of high level concept. We would obviously, from a legal perspective, built in a lot of processes for fair play and for equity. So it will be impossible for anyone to make a statement, a negative or adverse statement about a claim without giving that person an opportunity to respond, for example. So I think due process is important. So before anyone makes a statement that this is false or misleading, or you know, the nominee would be given an option to withdraw if they kind of got found out and they don't want to be embarrassed. But if we say to them, you have claimed to be on the ICANN board, our searchers could not prove that. Can you please state how we can verify that information? And if they refuse to provide that verification, then of course, I think the review committee could say, we've given this person an opportunity to respond. We don't believe this is accurate. And there has been no response. We don't believe this to be correct. So I hope that answers your question.
Yep. Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. It's literally, for example, again, since you gave example of ICANN, the Secretariat has the resource to verify if a person is bankrupt in Australia or any other country or any other economy. Of course, the NRC cannot do that. So there is a process where we can ask, okay, can you verify these 5 things? Because we cannot, we will verify this information. And then it goes hand in hand with the information provided by the nominee and the information which Secretariat can verify on their own.
As far as my understanding goes, we are a community-driven organization. If we are a community-driven organization, it is rightful that the laws or the rules and regulations are made by the community, for which we hold either through committees or through SIGs or through talk lists, through proposals, whichever way. But it's all community-driven. So there is now no two ways about it. It has to be community driven. Community will decide the rules, and those rules will be implemented by the organization. So that is absolutely clear. There is, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, number one. Number two, now coming to the issue of statement given by a candidate. Now remember, a candidate who's coming in for nomination, he's coming in for an important job on which the community is reposing faith in him because of some capabilities, some extra knowledge, which he has shown that he will be able to assist the community to do its job better. If that is so, the community has specified that he must have these qualifications or these the skills or this talent for a particular role. So the candidate who wants to come in for nomination is filling up those details and giving. It is rightful to check whether whatever that individual is giving is right or not. It is community's right to know that the candidate they are selecting meets the criteria they want. So for the organization to go through his details is right. And however, to save on embarrassment, what can be done as a first step is that any information which a candidate has submitted, which the organization finds is not true, is not correct, or it is not verifiable, it can write back to the candidate in the first instance that we have not found evidence of this. Please provide evidence of this statement, else remove it from your statement, which is going to be published in the this thing. So as a first step, let the organization write to the candidate and tell him which is the statement on which they have an objection or an observation. Once the candidate replies, if he removes it, good. If he provides evidence, good. If he still does not do it, then it is rightful for the organization to point it out to the whole community that, listen, he has given this as a candidate. However, this statement is not verifiable. We leave it to your better judgment to whether to vote for him or not.
Without excluding that.
Without excluding him,
Yes.
whether to vote for him or not.
Yes.
So that is right to information.
Yes.
So here we have given the community the right of information which they deserve.
Okay. Yep.
So that is what my
No, that is absolutely correct. That's the intent. Yes. Bertrand.
Yes. Okay. Now, just to add my 2 cents, oh, thank you. Yeah, much better. The fact that the statements of the nominee could be published publicly will refrain some people to lie directly. Because if you publish something saying that, I don't know, I was president of France, and so you should elect me to lead the EC. Well, it's a lie, and it will be published. So either I'm not lying and I'm sure I was the president of France and I will sue you for defamation, or I will just not do it. So the fact, it's not publishing something that's false about someone. It's just something to prevent false declaration.
Yes.
And
Prevent from falsifying. Yes.
And if we go to the, well, we are publishing this because this person says this and this, and we cannot verify it. We ask him to show us a proof of it, and he didn't answer. Well, like you say, too bad, you're going to be shamed.
Yeah, literally, this is, it might hinder people from applying, but that means they were supposed to be falsifying something. That's why they are not applying. So yes, but it's just to make sure that there is it is not a barrier, but a bridge which just require more information whether you can cross it or not. That's it. You can still cross it after falsifying, but we will publish this information after giving you enough options to respond to that before we publish it. Yes, that is the intent, exactly.
Yeah, it's just like, you know, that when you're crossing a red light, you can get your license suspended. But then it's up to you.
Literally, yep, okay.
Hi, Dhruv here. Are you guys worried that if there is some gray area, and in what I mean by gray area is some things are very clear, verifiable, and not. Something that I can think of, for instance, dissenting against your government and people having different opinion of the activity that the person did, whether that made him sort of like, you know, as a good candidate or a bad candidate, and people might have political views and different sort of views. Would that ever, like, are we thinking, do you have any thoughts on something like
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. We had, I mean, and the point was the reason why we want to make it as diverse as possible, because if someone from South Asia is having an opinion about someone, a nominee from South Asia, definitely the person who is representing from Southeast Asia or Oceania in the NRC would say, well, I don't care whatever your political view is, as long as it is correct, you are here. So that's why we said the diversity in the NRC is important. So if someone says something and NRC and the candidates from the member of the NRC has to come up with a joint statement. So one person cannot bulldoze saying, okay, because I do not agree with their political views, that information is incorrect. It has to come as an NRC opinion or a feedback rather than NRC committee member feedback. So they have to all agree on something. And if the NRC member cannot substantiate their feedback, then of course it's not going to be there. So yes, we had this discussion that, okay, fine, if of course political dissent is quite extraordinary in our region, which is healthy, but that can overpower these problems. But I don't think so that it will be an issue once you have a diverse pool of members from the community.
No, so the only issue that I had was like sometimes like when you represent an area and within that area, there is itself so much diversity and you put a pressure on that one person to represent that area. And sometimes they themselves, like the person from that region and the candidate, they don't see eye to eye. I would feel that they would have a very strong way to influence the rest of the NRC in going against the person from their region. That's what I'm more.
And that is the
afraid of.
reason why we are strongly suggesting that NRC doesn't have the right to exclude anyone, number one. And number two, if NRC believe that there is something wrong in the nomination statement of this nominee, they have to publish it themselves. Then they are putting themselves in front of the public for the review, and people say, hold on a second, what NRC is saying is wrong. So it's not like that they cannot just put any statement. It has to be legally verified as well. I mean, we have APNIC legal has to review that whatever, of course, ultimately, APNIC is registered in Australia. So there are laws. Someone can go and say, well, why you allowed NRC to publish something like that? So you cannot be negative about a person. You cannot make a political statement. These have to be reviewed in line with our code of conduct in journal. You can have difference of opinion, difference on political opinion, but you cannot just say that this person is not worthy of being a nominee.
Just one last point. One thing that also we need to take care of is like this thing should not get debated too much on the mailing list, because that's gonna color the whole election as well. Like right now, people see it, people go, but if this gets debated on the mailing list, then what you guys are doing might have a little bit of negative impact as well, at least in my mind that I can.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, because sometimes your intentions, people take it in a different manner. and they can say, oh, no, whatever you are saying is absolutely wrong. So once you have given a nominee X number of chances to provide a feedback, and you do mention that we asked these questions in response to this statement, and we still haven't got the right answer, or we got this answer, which the NRC believe is not good enough, has to be published there, right? Even if that generates a little bit of discussion, in my opinion, I think it is healthy discussion that we will be discussing nominees. We haven't ever discussed nominees on any mailing list, which is new to us, but I think it has been done in different regions. So as long as it remains within the code of conduct, which is sometimes difficult, but I would say we have to cross that bridge. We have to go into that healthy discussion mode at some point in life. So I think the APNIC community is at that edge where we have to have that discussion quite candidly. So Anupam ji, and then.
So Aftab, just one thing. So how is it going to play out? The nominee statement, and below that, there will be a statement from the NRC. It is also going to be in the same page
Yeah.
for people to consider.
Yeah.
Okay. So thanks for clarifying that. And the second one is when you say that it is consistent with bylaws. Okay. So what is currently the position? Is it inconsistent, or we are trying to be proactive to do
No,
it?
so what we are saying, what we have mentioned here, that formation of NRC doesn't go against the bylaws, and it says that any body cannot exclude anyone. So we cannot exclude anyone. The NRC cannot exclude anyone. That is consistent with the bylaws, nothing else. So we are not, NRC is not suggesting to change any voting rights or anything similar, because that's ingrained in the bylaws, that how people will vote, or how many votes they get. That's a bylaws discussion that NRC or any committee cannot change that. So what we have mentioned here, that NRC is consistent with the bylaws. It does not go against any of the point mentioned in the bylaws.
So NRC formation is consistent with the bylaws.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So I have another point, but I'll come back later.
Okay.
Yeah, Rupesh. Little bit confused about this thing. I completely support the NRC, but while there is any kind of, if everything is verified, well and good, but if there is any kind of a dispute, which I think Dhruv also was mentioning, if there is like a nominee is still insisting that is, for example, if I'm a nominee and I claim that I don't have any political affiliation, and then NRC finds out some picture with my prime minister or somebody, some politician, and NRC insists that I have a political affiliation, I insist that I don't have. Who's going to make a judgment on that? Who's going to decide that the dispute, right? And second point was, you mentioned earlier that only once the information is verified or findings are, you mentioned that it will be presented to a secretariat for them to decide, or so for them to like whatever take a decision they have to take. But later on, I also heard that NRC will be publishing it in their view and their finding on the website based on the criteria. So what is NRC going to do upon the finding or upon such kind of a dispute? Is the disputed facts, is that going to be presented to secretariat, or the disputed fact will be directly published on the website?
Okay, that's the prior case. Craig will come up on the stage. I just want to clarify one thing. Number one, political affiliation should not bar anyone from representing on any bodies at all. If point blank should not be, right? Pictures with people, I have pictures with people I'm not proud of now, but yeah, with Craig. But anyway, yes. On the side, it is very clear NRC cannot publish anything by itself. It has to provide a feedback which goes through secretariat, has to be reviewed on legal grounds, and then will be published by the secretariat. And if secretariat believe that some comments are probably derogatory or not clear, they can ask NRC, and they can ask, and they will be part of. And if you look at the document, Secretariat will remain part of the whole discussion at all times. So it's not that they are out of the discussion. For example, if they're part of the mailing list, they will review everything on ongoing basis. And if they see, if we are crossing the line, if NRC is crossing the line, they can say, hold on a second, that is not the intended purpose of NRC. So there, we have to place those checks and balances. For example, it is a community-led body. They can make mistakes, right? So there is a legal boundary we have to place and have in place. So Craig.
Thanks, Aftab, and thanks, Rupesh. I think it's important to clarify that, you know, at this stage of this process, we're talking high level, concept and design. But in the implementation, my job and the job of my colleague in APNIC Legal is to make sure that APNIC and the NRC members are protected from defamation and damages. So, I mean, off the top of my head, what I imagine it to be would be that you see, number one, the criteria that, you know, I don't like to use the word criteria, the questions that we ask nominees to answer has to be relevant to the position that they're seeking. Right. So if they are seeking a policy seek chair position, I would have thought that the community would probably think it's irrelevant if you ask them whether they're married or not, or they have children or not, or something like that, right? So you ask them about the experience attending APNIC policy seeks and, you know, that sort of thing. So I imagine that then what you will see is the question, the answers from the nominee, and then there'll be an NRC comment. And the NRC comment will, yes, we can confirm that Rupesh is a regular attendee at APNIC meeting and policy seek meetings, for example. If it is something that you say, we say, actually, we haven't seen you ever before, but you claim that you've been to 10 APNIC meeting, then we will say to you, Rupesh, before we publish, you make this claim, we can't verify it. And you say, yep, I have attended. I insist that I have attended, and I'm not going to change my statement. So, you know, the statement will say we cannot verify. We have given Rupesh an opportunity to reply, and he has chosen not to reply, for example. So that's the extent of the commentary. You know, from a defamation law point of view, people are entitled to make reasonable judgment and opinion. And, you know, as long as it's done in good faith, fairly to you. And if I say that, if I respond to your claim that we can't verify that Rupesh has attended 10 APNIC policy meetings that he claims to be, we've given him an opportunity to respond and he had chosen not to respond, I can't see a legal liability arising from that.
Yep. Okay, perfect.
Just to
can you repeat your name, because there are people on chat saying.
I am Parhar from ISPI. What I wish to state here is, as a community, I am looking for a candidate to do a specific job which helps the community. So that much is clear. If as a community member, we are looking for a specific person to do a specific job, obviously that specific person will need to have some criteria on which I am going to base my opinion, right? This is the need. We are not a political organization. We are simply an organization which has been particularly made for a particular job only. So in our organization, political views or any such views have no relevance, absolutely no relevance. What has relevance is we have got a cooperation SIG. As a community, we need to decide the candidates who come in for cooperation SIG must have this criteria. Let it be laid down by the community itself. For your policy SIG, this is the criteria. So question is that we must make it a process, and anything which is made into a proper process will always be followed. There will never be any dispute. But if we don't make it into a proper process, then obviously questions will arise. So the first thing that the NRC needs to do is lay down community approved criteria for each position, right? Once that criteria has been finalized, thereafter we ask for nominations for that to create your pool. The nominations come. Now, once the nominations come, the staff have the criteria in front of them, which is community driven. So they just compare the nomination which has come, a statement which has come from the candidate, and the criteria which community has defined to see whether they match. If there is a mismatch somewhere, they point it out to the candidate, listen, there is a mismatch here. Would you want to correct it? Or would you want to give some evidence to it so that we can take it as given? So in case the candidate gives it as evidence, good enough. If he says, no, I don't have any evidence, but I stand by my statement, good enough. That staff gives it to the NRC. And the NRC then in its statement says that this is what the candidate, the criteria is. This is what the candidate has written. This is what we found. And rest, it leaves it to the community to decide whether to vote for him, for the gentleman or not.
Yes. So as Craig explained, so step 0 is literally this process, right? Number one
Yes.
is
Absolutely right.
exactly defining the role,
Yes.
right? And in that sense, and on Dhrup's point is we on step 0 we are saying that we have to have a policy where you can do appeal, saying so there should be a third body which is the legal counsel and the general counsel in APNIC will say, well, I do not agree with the statement here, so I want to appeal. And then there is a legal process. Of course, APNIC has a legal process today to review any statement done by NRC, which NRC cannot publish anything itself on its own. So before publishing anything, it has to go through a legal process. So yes, that is a step 0. We have to agree. We as a community have to agree. Right now, the nomination application for all SIG chairs and co-chair is same, right? And sometimes it bars people from applying, saying, oh, I don't know if I'm a good fit for not for this SIG. If you have if you establish a criteria, people say, well, I tick all the boxes. Why not? I should apply now.
Right.
So it gives an opportunity to a lot of people who have not been part of our community and say, well, that looks like a good fit for me. I've been part of the policy. Well, I'm not very active in the APNIC, but okay, let me see if I can be a good candidate here. That's a two-way conversation now. Previously, right now, it was a one-way road. You put your application in, your nomination goes up. That's it, right? So there is no community feedback. There is no one telling you, well, it is good or it is bad or it is not verifiable. We are just putting a one step in the middle, which can help more candidates. Of course, it can bar a few candidates, but I think it's a good idea to bar them because they were not providing the right information. But yes.
See, a question here is not information. Question here, what we are trying to do, we are not here to reject candidates.
We cannot, legally cannot.
We are here to select people.
Yes.
Damn it. We want to select the right person.
Yes,
as a community member, exactly. I want to select the right person to represent me, period. So for that, I'm laying down a criteria. So please meet the criteria, go ahead. 10 people are able to meet the criteria, go ahead.
Yep.
Go for election. So that is what we need to be more, on what is the criteria. Just let's fix the criteria. I think once the criteria is fixed, everything will start falling into place.
Okay, thank you so much. Zubair.
Hi, Zubair here. Thank you, Aptabhai, for bringing this up. I just wanted to share that I faced a similar situation some times ago. And at that time, I was crying inside to send my voice out to somebody to let them know that the information which is showing by a nominee or by an competitor is not actually correct. I'm saying it's not correct, but I was struggling to reach my voice to some place where it will be heard. So thank you very much, first thing. And second thing, one tiny question. So the information NRC is publishing in the public domain regarding the feedbacks of a attendee or contender. So these are actually be the voice of NRC or the APNIC legal counsel vetted statement, because if anyone wants to challenge those feedbacks and wants to go in a legal system, then how the NRC members will be protected, or who will give legal help to those NRC members? I just want to make sure that these NRC members are covered from all kind of hassles which can be created by people who are actually having illegal intent to suffer these people, you know? That is what came into my mind. Thank you.
So Craig, legal indemnity?
All right, thank you. Good question again, but I think we need to wrap up soon because otherwise you're going to miss your bus to the dinner. Once the NRC is properly constituted, we at the Secretariat will investigate to make sure that we have a system of protecting all the NRC members. But the other thing is that, you know, when legal vets information, it is for the for the key purpose of making sure that NRC members don't accidentally trigger a defamatory statement, for example. So we'll be very careful about that. So there are a lot of mitigation that we could do. And in addition, we would look at insurance, for example, to make sure that that would be covered. But I can say safely, Director General is sitting here, that any community members who serve the APNIC community in that capacity, if they do so in good faith, and they are the subject of any legal claim, then they would be protected by APNIC. Director General is nodding, but that is our position.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for that. Yes, because I mean the problem is if for example, as Rob mentioned very nicely previously, that if, for example, someone wants to go ahead and do a defamation case against a member of the NRC in that country, then it is of course a challenge. But of course, it can be good to know, can be covered.
Yeah, Anupam, yes. So possibly I have missed the earlier discussion. So how will the NRC be constituted? So their vetting will still be done by the Secretariat per se, or how is it going to be?
So this is how we are proposing to constitute NRC. Every SIG will elect one member from their respective community. So we have member from, there are 3 SIGs, SIG routing security, policy, corporation, and NIR. There are 4 SIGs. Then we have INRC and a NRONC. So that makes 6, and then you have 1 member coming in from the APNIC EC. So that makes it 7. So that's odd. So you always have odd member. Then even if there is a reason to go for a voting within that NRC, so there's always odd number. It's easier to vote. So that's how it is constituted. Again, that every SIG can define their own election procedure. So we are not dictating that how every member should be elected from that particular SIG. But of course, there are some points which we have laid down in our proposal. If SIG wants to consider that, that's fine. If they want to come up with their own procedure, that is up to them as well. Right. So if no one is coming to the mic, then that's great. Any questions? It's time to go anyway. Yeah, anyway, just to say it's an ongoing discussion, right? If you still have any question, find me or anybody else, any SIG chair, during the APNIC conference. You still have that document available on the APNIC talk. You can raise that point, in fact, on every mailing list. So you can raise your point there, ask any question, happy to provide any feedback. But please provide your feedback, right? So that we know that we are going into the right, it's a step -0, I would say. So we are not there yet. So we want to be at some place where you can say, okay, fine, let's move on. So please keep that discussion going so we can come to a conclusion as early as possible. On that note, I would say thank you so much. Thank you, Craig, for providing the feedback. Thank you, Jeremy, for fixing my proposal document, fixing the nits. Thank you for that. And thank you, everyone. Let's catch up again.
You left the stage by the corner. Never be a big gun. I think you're strong.